and welcome back to Haywire34. This is week 4. Wow. Thank you so much for continuing on this journey with me. Today we shall be listening to chapters 7 and 8, and I hope you enjoyed them. Chapter 7. Hector went to the front door. As expected, it was Auntie Bimbo. "Welcome," he greeted her warmly as she bustled past him, her arms laden with rosaries, scapulars, and carrier bags that were bursting with brightly coloured provisions. He made an attempt to help her. "Auntie, please let me But she was already on her way to the kitchen, brushing off any offers of assistance. Closing the front door, Hector could hear Auntie Bimbo scolding Penny for trying to help her. "Do you want to damage your back some more?" she remonstrated loudly. "But leave me!" Auntie Bimbo interrupted, waving Penny aside as she did so. "One bag won't kill me," Penny persisted. "One rosary will not kill you either, but will you pray?" "No, but it's the bag you want to carry. Leave me, Joe." "Hey, Auntie Bimbo," Penny protested. "Now lie." Lost for words, Penny began to laugh. 15 years we've known each other, Auntie, and you refused to let me win once. You're not easier. "Life is not easy, my dear," Auntie Bimbo snapped back. "But we have to face it with the truth. You should not be carrying heavy bags, and you should return to God." "How do you know that I don't pray, Auntie? Do you?" Remaining silent, Penny eyed Auntie Bimbo defensively, but she disregarded the look. Placing the bags on the floor by the kitchen table, Auntie Bimbo thrust the rosaries and scapulars into Penny's hand. Hector, who was following behind, began to laugh. Auntie Bimbo eyed him. "There's one for each of you." "But I'm not a Christian," Hector protested, "and I don't believe in God." Auntie Bimbo side-eyed him mockingly. "But when something happens to you, the first name out of your mouth is Christ." "Checkmate, Auntie B," Penny declared, and began to help Auntie Bimbo empty the bags, while Hector hurried to answer the doorbell that just rang. Despite not being a blood relative, Auntie Bimbo, who was introduced to Penny by a Nigerian friend, had become part of the family for Penny and Hector and their friends. Everyone loved Auntie Bimbo and her candour, especially after the first bottle of her favourite red, yellow-tailed jammy red roux, which she loved very chilled. Hector was still smiling when he arrived at the front door and opened it to Gretchen and her twin sons, Noah and Dominic. Feigning surprise, Hector playfully asked, "What are you doing here? Shouldn't you be at school?" "It's half-term," Dominic explained, while Noah added, "And we've come for lunch." "Lunch? Here? But we don't have any food." The boys looked at their mother, Gretchen, with worried eyes. "But you said we were having lunch here." Noah frowned at her. Just then Auntie Bimbo's familiar voice called out from the kitchen, "Is that my boys?" The twins' eyes sparkled with excitement, and Dominic turned to Gretchen, saying, "It sounds like Auntie Bimbo." "Go and see," Gretchen suggested, and the boys eagerly raced off towards the voice. As she watched the twins racing each other to get to Auntie Bimbo, Gretchen smiled. They've really missed her. I'm sure she's missed them too. Come in. "Thanks for having us," Gretchen said, leaning in to give Hector a kiss on the cheek. Leaning forward for the kiss, he glanced behind her. "And Sir Mick?" he asked, surprised. "He's supposed to be here already," Gretchen explained. "He left ages before us." "Then I'm sure he'll be along shortly," Hector replied, "and I hope you've come with a good appetite," he added, closing the door behind her. With the number of bags Auntie Bimbo brought with her, she'll be cooking up more food than the customary monthly supply that she leaves in the freezer for Penny and I, Hector concluded. "Music to my ears," Gretchen thrilled. "We'll be grateful for any takeaway we can scrounge at the end." She expounded with a gentle nudge, before handing Hector a plastic bag containing a bottle of Sauvignon Blanc and a couple of bottles of Prosecco. "The flowers are for Her Majesty," she said, referring to the bouquet intended for Penny. The kitchen was alive with the vibrant energy and excitement that Auntie Bimbo's visit aroused. Having taken over from Penny, the boys were helping her with unpacking the bags of shopping. Warm sunlight flooded the room through the wide-open French doors, casting a glow on the lively scene. The gentle breeze that drifted in carried the mingling smells of the various ingredients, creating an enticing aroma that wafted throughout the house. "Which bag has the tomatoes?" Auntie Bimbo called out to them. "This one!" Dominic shouted, peering inside the green plastic bag with the large-leaved spinach brimming out in all directions, his eyes widening at the sight inside. "I've never seen so many tomatoes in my whole life!" he enthused. "Noah, look!" he shouted, leaning the bag into view for his brother. "We need them all for the eforiro, jollof, and stew," Auntie Bimbo declared, to the delight of Hector, who welcomed the news of Haywire with a thumbs up to Auntie Bimbo, while the twins cheered happily on hearing that jollof was included in the list. "Are we having chin-chin as well?" Noah asked. "You're obsessed with chin-chin," Penny noted with a warm smile. "Why not? It's very nice," Auntie Bimbo defended. And then, turning to Noah, she told him, "If we finish everything else on time, I shall make you chin-chin, my dear." And with that, Auntie Bimbo grabbed up the bag with the tomatoes and spinach. "I need to soak them in salt water to clean them well," she explained to the boys, who continued with their enthusiastic assistance, while excitedly sharing tales of their latest school adventures. Meanwhile, Penny, who was seated at the round wooden table, poured a generous glass of her favourite tipple for Auntie Bimbo. Arriving at the door of the kitchen, Gretchen paused, observing the heartwarming scene with a tinge of sadness. If only Mick was here to be a part of all this, she sighed. "It's so him," she mused silently. "Anyway," she added, "at least the boys are enjoying themselves." Gretchen smiled to herself. "I'm glad they're growing up with this wonderful sense of family and belonging." Turning from the sink, where she was rinsing off the spinach, Auntie Bimbo's gaze landed on Gretchen as she entered the kitchen. Her face lit up with joy. "My daughter!" Auntie Bimbo exclaimed, rushing to envelop Gretchen in a warm, loving embrace. At the embrace, Gretchen's eyes filled with tears, but she quickly blinked them away, returning the embrace with equal affection. "Auntie," she whispered, holding the elderly woman tightly, as if she never wanted the hug to end. Auntie Bimbo, sensing Gretchen's vulnerability, whispered softly, "Are you okay?" Gretchen gave a small nod. "Whatever the problem, you are strong, my dear. This too shall pass," Auntie Bimbo reassured her. Gretchen gently pulled away, eyeing Auntie Bimbo, while still hoping that Penny had not mentioned anything about Daniel to her. Just then, Noah bounded over to the two women. "Auntie Bimbo's teaching us how to make jollof rice and chin-chin," he announced excitedly to his mother before running back to his brother. "Leave the chin-chin for another day," Gretchen suggested to Auntie Bimbo. "Why?" "You're making other things, Auntie. It'll be too much." "The Lord is my strength, my daughter, and here's the lubrication for your joints," Penny retorted on cue, handing Auntie Bimbo the glass of cold, jammy red roux, which was received with a wide, grateful smile. After 2 large sips, Auntie Bimbo, placing the glass on the table, pulled both women close to her. "Thank you, my daughters, for your kindness and generosity to me always," she said, her voice full of emotion. Gretchen froze. "Please say no more," she willed Auntie Bimbo. Unbeknownst to anyone else, Gretchen had recently handed over the keys to her first flat to Auntie Bimbo, allowing her to live there rent-free. This was Gretchen's way of expressing gratitude for the love and support that Auntie Bimbo had shown her over the years, especially when the boys were babies and she and Mick were both working. There were other kind deeds that Gretchen did for different people, but, as with this one, she preferred to keep them to herself. The doorbell rang again. Hector was in the middle of squeezing fresh lemon into the 2 plastic cups that already had a sprig of mint each and some sparkling water. It was his special recipe for Noah and Dominic, and which they always requested when they came to visit. "Can you get that, darling? I think it's Mick," Hector asked Penny. "Thank God," Gretchen exhaled, as Penny, replying, "Sure," hobbled out of earshot before Auntie Bimbo declared what a godsend her new housing arrangement was. Opening the front door, Penny was taken aback. "Kunle!" she cried with delight. Kunle, Hector and Rupert met at grad school and became best friends. It was through him that Hector and Rupert had developed a great liking for Nigerian food. Kunle's mother, a talented cook, would ensure that her son returned to college with a bountiful supply of homemade dishes, intent on preventing anything from diverting his focus from his studies. The quantity of food she provided was always more than Kunle could consume on his own within the 5 days he'd spend each week at college before returning to his auntie's place in Peckham for the weekend with his dirty laundry and empty food containers. It was thanks to Kunle's mother's cooking that Rupert had developed a particular fondness for jollof rice with red oxtail stew, and Hector eforiro, a rich and savoury Yoruba spinach dish. "Gaviesi," Penny hailed Kunle playfully, referring to his royal status since his accession to his father's throne 9 years prior. "Prostrate yourself, woman," he joked. "Sorry, Your Majesty, but my back will not permit. And besides, I'm an Igbo princess. What's your problem? But you're not the king like your brother, so prostrate, Jaw." Penny bobbed a curtsy. "What kind of a greeting is that?" Kunle frowned, pretending to take offence. "You've been in this country way too long, my sister, eh?" Penny chuckled. "Well, she apologised in his language and moved aside to let him in. As he entered, he embraced her with his free hand. "My sis, how body?" Penny sighed. "It's not easy, oh, my brother, but body day." "It is well, my dear, it is well," he reassured her and handed her a bag of treats. "Straight from Niger," he told her. Peering into the bag, Penny squealed. "Suya!" she cried with delight. "It's been over 10 years since I last ate suya. Oh, Kunle, thank you." Kunle smiled. "This was a special order made by your husband. He said that I was not to return to London without ram suya, chicken suya, beef suya, guinea fowl, and all your favourites." "Oh, Hector," Penny cooed. "He's a smart man, my dear. Happy wife, happy life," Kunle teased. "For real," she concurred, and taking his hand, Penny led the way to the kitchen to join the rest. Hector was in the garden on the phone to Rupert when he spied Kunle walk into the kitchen with Penny. "Kunle's just arrived," he told Rupert. "I thought he was working on some business deal in Nigeria. They concluded last week, so he's in town, en route to the States to check out some raw material for something else." "Hector the man!" Kunle's voice interrupted. "Hey, Kunle!" Hector greeted, putting the call on loudspeaker. "Rupert's on the line," he said, motioning to the phone. "Mr. Bainbridge, sir," Kunle shouted to Rupert. "Chief!" Rupert shouted back. "Where you dey?" Kunle demanded. "We've just got back from Windlesham," Rupert told him. "Windlesham call Windlesham ni. How can I fly in from Niger, go to Chiswick to shower and change, and still make it to Muswell Hill before you? Ah, you're sluggish, my friend. Come on. As you Brits would say, get a wiggle on, my friend." "Said the man who's never usually on time," Hector chuckled. "What do you mean?" Kunle challenged jokingly. "I'm the man on the ground here. Mr. Bainbridge is still Windleshaming his way over, and only God knows when he will finally arrive." Pausing, Kunle looked back into the kitchen. "I thought you said Hanson was going to be here. Where is he?" "I just spoke to him," Hector replied. "He's on his way." "Hey!" Kunle sighed. "And you people say us Africans always late. Look at it now. All us Africans are here, present and correct, and we're still missing 3 Brits. Anyway, Hector, it looks like it's you and me and the 37-year-old whiskey." "What?" Rupert gasped. "You've got it there?" "We sure have," Kunle replied, "and we're going to do it serious damage starting right now." "No!" Rupert cried. "Don't you dare start it without me." "Foolish man," Kunle laughed. "I knew that would quicken his steps." "Did you really bring the bottle with you?" Hector whispered. "Yes, 2, Kunle nodded. "One for today and the other for you to enjoy on another day, my dear." "You better hurry. Rupert, he started pouring," Hector teased. "Sarah!" Rupert could be heard shouting. "Hurry up, the food's almost ready." Kunle and Hector burst out laughing. "And don't forget Auntie Bimbo's Swiss chocolates you went home to pick up," Hector reminded him, and they hung up. Kunle turned to Hector. "I'm serious about that deal we talked about." "We're ready at this end," Hector responded. "Great. If you 3 can come to Nigeria Tuesday at the latest, we can close it." "But what about your trip to the States?" "Ah, it can wait until after this deal." Hector looked excited. "Can deals move this quickly?" Kunle laughed. "I keep telling you guys, Nigeria is where it's at. A deal can take a day or it can take 10 years. It depends on who you know. And you know me, and Ekene's your brother-in-law, so what's your problem?" "Well, the taste of the pudding is in the eating, as they say," Hector responded. "So we'll see." And with that, Hector and Kunle headed back in the direction of the kitchen. Feeling his legs becoming heavy and difficult to move, Hector stopped walking and shook them about. As he did so, he flashed Kunle a frustrated glance. The sensation in Hector's legs was his signal of a long night of pain ahead. "Oh, Christ!" Hector groaned quietly. As he uttered the words, Hector's gaze fell on Auntie Bimbo. He remembered her words and smiled. Looking up to the sky, he made a silent appeal. "If there's anything or anyone out there, please give us this deal," he prayed silently. Reaching the French doors, Hector could hear the laughter and chatter echoing from the kitchen. The warmth and camaraderie within was palpable. He paused for a moment to take in the scene. Auntie Bimbo stood at the stove, stirring a large pot of simmering red tomato stew. Her colourful attire and cheerful demeanour added to the lively atmosphere. Noah and Dominic were perched on high stools, eagerly chatting, while casting frequent glances towards the cooker, anticipating the flavours of their favourite dishes. Hector's gaze shifted across to Penny. "Penny," he sighed silently. "My darling Penny." He watched her, sat at the round wooden table, observing the scene with an expression that was a mix of amusement and contentment. The money from the deal will make a huge difference, Hector ruminated. We'd have money for different investments to carry us through all eventualities, he thought silently. Gretchen caught Hector's attention next, as she finished topping up her glass with some more Prosecco. Returning to beside Auntie Bimbo, Gretchen leaned against the counter and she took a sip of her drink, before resuming her friendly banter with Auntie Bimbo. Their relationship's warmth was evident as the two women laughed and chatted like old friends, often touching each other's arms as they did so. If Penny's right about Gretchen's feelings, Hector reflected silently. This deal may be just the right boost for her and Mick, Hector pondered. It'd be great if we can pull the deal off, Hector suddenly told Kunle. Come to Nigeria and we shall, Kunle replied with such confidence that Hector dared to believe it. Then it's as good as done, Hector smiled. How about some of that whiskey to toast it? Now you're talking, Kunle beamed and led the way to where he'd left the second bag he'd brought with him and which contained the bottles of prime whiskey. On entering the kitchen, Hector cast a concerned glance at Penny. Her eyes were displaying signs of increased pain. I hope we can make it through the day, he thought, and followed Kunle for a fine glass of what he was hoping would bring him some respite. Much later that night, as the cab pulled away from Penny and Hector's, Gretchen found herself lost in reflections on the day's events. I'm so glad he made it, albeit late. And with his guitar, she thrilled silently, as she watched Mick from the back seat of the cab that was taking them home. You brought the party, Mick, she told him with a smile. Auntie Bimbo did, he replied. You both did, with a screech-along, Gretchen laughed, recalling how Mick and Auntie Bimbo drunkenly led the cat's chorus of off-key voices that accompanied Mick's guitar renditions of old songs. Gretchen smiled wider, admiring Mick's side profile as he sat in the front seat. It's been a long time since I've seen you this relaxed and happy, Gretchen told him. It was a great night, he responded. You were very much in your element, especially after the men's session that the four of you had in the garden with the doors closed, Gretchen said, her eyes lovingly trained on her husband. What were you all talking about? Pipe dreams, Mick replied, rendering Gretchen silent. Mick couldn't stop smiling. It was a great night, he reminisced silently. Oh, that whiskey! Nice one, Kunle. I could really get used to that. Oh! Mick groaned aloud suddenly. Are you okay? Gretchen asked on noticing him reach for his stomach as he groaned. Yes, he fibbed, turning to flash her a smile. Nothing that 3 days in Nigeria won't heal. Are you three really going to catch a flight out there tomorrow? Gretchen asked, trying not to sound irritated. It's a chance of a lifetime, Mick told her, and they both fell silent. If that deal comes off, oh my God, Mick gasped silently, as the excitement of the possibility invigorated him. You'll be in for quite a shock, madam. Oh God, please let it come through, Mick prayed silently. It'll be nice going back to being happy, being a family again. Mick glanced back lovingly at his boys and Gretchen in the back of the taxi. His gaze met with Gretchen's. Mick smiled. If only you knew how much I love you, he thought to himself, as he let his gaze linger on her softened countenance. Perhaps it was the lingering effect of the wine, or maybe the look in his eyes, but Gretchen felt emboldened to bridge the gap that had slowly been growing between her and Mick. With a mixture of excitement and trepidation, she suggested, Let's have a dinner party on Saturday. This Saturday? Yes, you'll be back by then, won't you? Gretchen replied. Yes, we'll be back on Friday afternoon at the latest. Mick winced. Are you all right? Gretchen asked him again. It's just a touch of indigestion. I ate too much. And you drank too much of that whiskey. You forgot that you're not a spirit man. Oh, I didn't forget, Mick beamed. That whiskey's not your regular whiskey. The taste... Mick broke off with a pained smile. It's worth every pang of indigestion. I'll take your word for it, Gretchen conceded. So, back to the dinner party, she resumed. Are you up for it? I'm more than up for it. But you like to plan things way in advance. I know, but let's be spontaneous. I have no problem with spontaneity, Mick smiled. Can you handle it, though? Of course I can, Gretchen insisted. Smiling, Mick shrugged. Then Saturday it is, partner. Gretchen and Mick, with their sons fast asleep, sat the rest of the journey in comfortable silence, each contemplating the significance of the day's events. Mick thankful that Gretchen had not kicked up a fuss about him going to Nigeria with Hector and Rupert, and Gretchen delighted with their rapport throughout the day and the possibility of a fresh start that it seemed to suggest. End of Chapter 7. Chapter 8. Have the boys gone back to school already? Penny asked Gretchen. No, they're on a play date with a friend. They're back! Sarah interrupted, rushing from the window in Penny's sitting room. The three friends had come together an hour earlier to await their returning husbands. "I'm so excited!" Sarah enthused. "Don't get your hopes up," Gretchen advised. "I doubt if the deal came off." "Gretchen!" Penny chided. "Do any of you know what this deal is about?" Sarah asked. "Nope." "No?" Penny cast a surprised glance at Gretchen. "Hector told me that this is Mick's baby, so how come you know nothing about it, Gretch?" "I promise you I know nothing." "Did you ask?" "No." "Wow!" Sarah exclaimed. "Your husband tells you at short notice that he's off to a business meeting in a foreign country and you don't ask." "No, Sarah, I don't. Did you ask, Rupert?" "Of course I did," came the smug response. "So why were you asking us what the deal is about?" "He wouldn't give me any details," Sarah replied sheepishly. "Ah," Gretchen remarked. "You asked and I didn't, yet we're both none the wiser." "Me too," Penny chimed in, laughing. "Looks like Mick swore them to secrecy." Gretchen grunted. Mick and his harebrained ideas. "Not so harebrained this time, according to Hector," Penny remarked. "We'll see," Gretchen maintained. "We will," Penny added resolutely. "And please, Gretch, show some enthusiasm when they come in. For the three of them to have rushed off as they did, it must mean a lot to them. So the least we three can do is be supportive." "Fine, I'll smile and say nothing." "Good idea," Sarah agreed. At that moment the men entered the room. Sarah saw them first. "I say," she exclaimed, "Nigeria certainly suits you. You all look so relaxed. With all the 'sorry, I can't talk now' I got to my calls, I expected you all to be looking a tad more harried." "It's been hectic," Rupert responded. "But you don't look like you missed a meal," Sarah quipped. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Just saying," Sarah concluded with a gentle pat to Rupert's stomach. "The meetings involved food and drink almost 24 hours a day." "Meetings indeed," Penny chaffed. "I think they've been on a jolly," Sarah goaded playfully. You do look energized," Gretchen concurred, looking Mick over. "The pace of it was indescribable. Nothing like doing business here," Mick responded. "You can say that again," Hector grumbled. "They never stop. Your peeps almost killed us, darling," he told Penny. "It's going to take a few weeks for me to recover, if ever." "I loved every minute of it," Mick piped up. "I found it so invigorating. Oh!" "It exhausted me," Rupert admitted. "Any more than these few days and I'd be returning in a body bag." "I'm dead already," Hector confessed. "But hats off to Kunle and our fella here," Hector added with a nod to Mick. "I can't say it enough, Mick. Respect to you, fella. You're a machine." "So, are we celebrating or commiserating?" Sarah asked gingerly. "It was good," Rupert replied. "Come on, it was better than good," Mick clarified. Bowing her head, Gretchen sighed silently. "Here we go again." "Hector?" Penny entreated. "It was nothing like I expected." Penny cast him a look of exasperation. "We've ascertained that, darling." "But I need more sympathy here," Hector insisted. "They half killed me. I was in agony the whole bloody time." "We both were," Rupert added. "But there's nothing wrong with you," Sarah told him. "There is now, after the bloody Nigerians dealt with me. They're ruthless," Rupert whimpered. "Thank God we had Mick, the star player. He outpaced everyone." "They loved him," Hector declared. "Mick the Cutlass! Someone nicknamed him because he's sharp." "Mick the Cutlass?" Sarah and Penny echoed, beginning to laugh. "Come on, guys," Mick blushed. "No, fella, jokes apart," Hector protested. "You are amazing. Your energy, your knowledge, everything. I was happy and proud to be on your team." "Me too, Mick. I'm really glad I could be a part of this, and I wish you all the success in the world. You really deserve it, mate." Turning to Gretchen, Rupert added, "This is just the tip of the iceberg. Great things are in the pipeline for Mick. He's done you so proud." Gretchen, who'd remained impassive throughout, flushed red. "Well done, Mick," she said to her husband. "I underestimated these fellas," Mick cut in, shifting the focus from himself. "I never knew finance could be raised so quickly. Kudos to you, Rupert." "And you, Hector," Mick smiled. "Without your computer model, we'd have nothing to show. I'm in no doubt of what it took out of you. Thanks, mate." "Aw, this is so lovely," Sarah cooed. "Does this mean your trip was successful?" Penny asked. "Yes," Hector responded. "That's what we've been saying." "What's the deal for?" Gretchen piped up. "To build a waste management plant," Rupert explained. "Waste management?" Sarah spluttered. "What do you know about waste management?" "Nothing. I'm just the money man, securing the finance for the project," Rupert explained. and I created the computer model of the waste-to-energy system based on Mick's design." "Mick's design?" Gretchen cried. "Yes, Gretchen, my design." "But what do you know about waste management?" she asked, looking confused. "I did an MA in it, remember? And my thesis was designing a clean waste-to-energy system. I've been studying and playing with the ideas for the past 4 years," Mick reminded. But you thought I was just messing about and wasting money," Mick interrupted her. "That's not true," Gretchen protested. "How can I have an opinion about something of which I knew nothing? You did know, Gretch, because I told you right from the start." "No, I did, but you weren't interested because it wasn't bringing in the money immediately." "Well, it's going to now," Rupert interjected. "A heap of it." Penny stared perplexed. "When did you all put this idea together?" she asked. "We didn't. Kunle did," Hector disclosed. "When?" "It wasn't like a plan," Mick explained. "I had an idea that has never been tried before. It came up in conversation one day when we were out with Kunle. He liked it and thought it may work in Nigeria." "And that was it?" Gretchen asked. "More or less, yes," Mick replied. "Not quite," Rupert interposed. "He needed a computer model of Mick's idea, which Hector created." "How?" Penny demanded. "What do you mean, how? I do have a degree in engineering, remember, as well as being a software developer. Gosh, do you women know anything about us, your husbands?" "We do, but how did you manage with your pain?" "Aha, now that's a different thing. It wasn't easy, and it took me a lifetime because of having to stop and start due to the pain. But we got there, eh, fella?" Hector said, turning to Mick. "We did," he agreed, as they fist-bumped each other. Once done, Kunle got a team together in Nigeria who'll be executing the plan on the ground, and I secured the financing for the project through the guys in the emerging markets team at the bank, Rupert elucidated. Then Ekene introduced Kunle to some ministers. "Our Ekene?" Penny asked Hector. "Yes, we saw him in Abuja." "Your brother's a legend," Mick declared. "Wow, quite the operation," Sarah exclaimed. "And what happens now?" Gretchen asked. "Our job is done, except the occasional drop-in," Hector responded, motioning towards him and Rupert. "It's now up to Mick, Kunle and the contractors to build it." "Meaning?" "Let's talk about this later," Mick suggested to Gretchen. "Mick," she persisted. "Okay, I'm going to have to spend a lot of time in Nigeria until the project is fully set up. But not immediately, though," he added quickly. Gretchen made as if to say something, but catching Penny's eye, she sat back and forced a weak smile. "I think a celebration's in order," Penny piped up. "Gretch, will you help me?" And with that, they left the room. On entering the kitchen, Gretchen threw her hands up. "I feel awful, Pen." Penny looked surprised. "Why?" she asked Gretchen. "I do now recall that Mick did try to tell me about his idea, but I didn't want to know. But that was before." "Yes, but I still feel ashamed of myself." "You've got to move past that, Gretch." "No, Penny, I'd behaved appallingly. Mick did an MA in the same house as me and I let it wash over me. What kind of a human being am I? Who can be that disconnected? Come on, Gretch. Poor Mick's never had a break. First his mother, who with her schizophrenia couldn't help being disconnected, and then me." "Oh, Gretch, stop it," Penny implored. "It's a happy day. Let's celebrate him." "I will, but he deserves so much better than me, after all he's been through in life." "But you're who he chose, and he's happy with his choice." Walking to the sink, Gretchen rolled up her sleeve and began washing up the things in there. Penny burst out laughing. "You couldn't bear to see them there, could you?" "No, I couldn't. I can't bear mess." "A mess? There are 2 cups in the sink, Gretch." "I know. You need therapy, woman." "I've had therapy, remember, since I was a child. It's not a joke when I say that my parents and their bohème lifestyle really scarred me." Gretchen felt pensive. "Oh, Gretchen," she admonished herself suddenly. "Here I go again. My childhood was paradise compared to Mick's." She glanced back at Penny. "Can you imagine what it must have been like for Mick being raised by a single mother struggling with schizophrenia?" "I don't even want to imagine, Gretch. It must have been awful for both of them," Penny admitted. "Can you imagine the turmoil and unpredictability?" "Pen, I know. But he's never once complained. Can you believe it?" "Yes, I can. That's Mick all over." "Yes," Gretchen accepted. "He never complained, even when his company folded." She paused and then added, "And I mistook his silent resilience for apathy. I stopped listening, Penny. I stopped hearing or seeing him, and he never once complained about that either." Beginning to cry, Gretchen dried her hands and tearing off a sheet of kitchen towel, she wiped her eyes. "Oh, Penny, you should see him with his mother," she resumed. "He's so gentle, so patient, just like he is with me. He's a wonderful guy, but you're pretty amazing too, Gretch. No, I'm not. Auntie Bimbo told me about you letting her live rent-free in your old flat. She wasn't meant to tell anyone. She couldn't help it, Gretch. I was booking her a cab for her previous address, so she had to give me the new address. I recognized it, and she told me what you did. So, you're pretty amazing too, Gretch. Thanks for being nice, Pen, but you know I'm not. I'm selfish, and I'm self-absorbed. When things get choppy, I self-preserve, whereas Mick thinks outside of the box to protect the ones he loves. You're being too harsh on yourself, Penny disagreed. No, Gretchen insisted. I'll give you an example. When he was young, and his mother was having one of her episodes, he came back from school with a friend of his to their tiny flat and found the living room had been splashed all over with psychedelic colours, paint of psychedelic colours. Can you imagine that, Penny? But instead of complaining about the embarrassment as I would have done, he told his friend that he'd done it so that his friend wouldn't think badly about his mother. How sweet is that, Penny? He's a pretty special human being, Penny said, beginning to cry also. He really is, Gretchen said, handing Penny the roll of kitchen towel. Imagine the love it took, turning a moment of potential embarrassment into one that earned kudos for his mother for being a cool mother. Gretchen smiled sadly. Wiping down the sink, she turned to face Penny. That's exactly what he's done with me for so long, and especially in the past 4 years, Gretchen attested. Instead of complaining and moaning like I have done about him, he's clearly been beavering away and thinking outside of the box for a solution. Oh, Penny, how can I look him in the eye? He understands you and he loves you. I know, and that's what makes it worse. He's decent no matter what, unlike me. You're different people, that's all. I know, Penny, he's nice and I'm not. That's not what I meant, Gretch. I know, but it's the truth. No, Gretch, Penny countered. You look at things differently, that's all. Because of your past experiences, you respond differently to challenges. You're right, Gretchen agreed. Mine made me selfish. No, Penny disagreed. You're more defensive, that's all. Now you're being euphemistic, Gretchen scoffed. No, Gretch. Since our last conversation that day in the car, I've been thinking a lot about things. I was harsh on you, and I'm so sorry. You were spot on, Penny. No, I spoke without thinking, Penny maintained. Perhaps, but it was the truth, as I saw it. But it's not the reality, Gretch. After we spoke, I remembered Mick once telling Hector and I about his mother's sister, with whom he used to stay whenever his mother had one of her episodes. That's his Aunt Monica. Yes, that's the one. Although kind and well-intentioned, she couldn't understand or accept his mother's struggles. Oh, God, Gretchen groaned. I'm also guilty of that. But it doesn't make you a bad person. Nice try, Penny. Just hear me out, Gretch. It made him more protective of his mother because he saw it as him and her versus the misunderstanding world. He adores her, Pen. I can tell. Do you know what? He goes to see her at least twice a week, Gretchen cut in. They've been through a lot, Gretchen. I'd love to be that close with my parents, Gretchen sighed sadly. Have you tried? We're so different, Penny. You and I are different too, but we muddle through, Penny reminded her. I know, but it's not the same with them, Gretchen replied. They're on a mission to shock. I wouldn't say that, Penny disagreed. I think they're just being themselves, without a care of how it impacts others. Oh, come on, Gretchen. It can only impact you as much as you allow it to. True, Penny, but that's easier said than done. Okay, yeah, fair point. But I think you've boxed them so firmly into the villain role that you can't see past that. I don't agree, Gretchen rebuffed. Your comfort zone is your Achilles heel, Gretch. Perhaps. I think it is, Penny persisted. Your parents' characters and how they live is outside of your comfort zone, so you see them as the enemy and you retreat. Mick losing his job and not moving forward when and how you envisaged he should was a threat to your comfort zone, so you blocked him out. Gretchen stayed silent. Do you see what I'm getting at? Penny inquired. I really don't know anything anymore, Gretchen admitted sadly. This whole situation has taught me how little I know about anything. I've got so much to learn, Pen. We've all got lots to learn, darling, Penny said, hugging her. And lots to appreciate too, Gretchen added, as she reached into the cupboard where Penny stored her best glasses. End of chapter 8. I'm so happy for Mick that things are finally going well for him. Yay! And Gretchen is now falling back in line with him. Nice one, Gretch. My question is about that. Do you think it's going to last? Do you think Gretchen is going to, continue on the road of amour with him? Or do you think something is going to happen and she'll get tired again and, I don't know. And Daniel, where do you think this leaves Daniel? I'd love to know your answers in the comments section. And until next week, it's goodbye from me and have a fantastic week ahead. Take care. Bye-bye.